Hello everyone and welcome to our 2025 KCEN 6 News Winter Special. We have our whole weather impact team here, including myself. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Farrell.
And I'm Texas Today morning meteorologist Faith Colbert.
And midday meteorologist Whitney Huddleston.
And although Central Texas is not located in an area prone to massive winter precipitation outbreaks, we do want our community to be as prepared as possible if and when the time arises.
That is why we have collectively met with various leaders, done some digging into the records, and we'll also provide you with a guideline on what to expect if you're new to the area this winter season.
So sit back, relax, and let the winter preparations begin.
Wintertime. While most of the country thinks of snowmen and ice skating, here in Central Texas, it's still t-shirt weather for much of the season. We may still see snow and ice, but it's more of the exception than the rule. When we talk about winter averages and extremes, it's important to understand the meteorological definition of winter. We measure winter from December 1st through February 28th or 29th on a leap year. We do this rather than use the winter solstice for two reasons. One, record keeping is much easier, and two, it better aligns with temperature and precipitation patterns. So what does an average Central Texas winter look like? Early winter still feels very much like fall. Average high temperatures still in the 60s for the first part of December, with overnight lows hovering in the 40s. By mid-December, those averages fall to the upper 50s and stay there through the first part of January. From there, we return to the 60s and maintain that through the end of the season. Translation, it stays pretty mild here in Central Texas. That doesn't mean it doesn't get cold here. Since the year 2000, we average about 38 freezes per year. Well, how cold can it get? We usually see our coldest temps in the teens and 20s, but we've had 4 days since the year 2000 where our temperatures fell into the single digits. On one occasion, in February of 2021, the temperature fell all the way to -1, but that still doesn't break the all-time record. That happened on January 31st, 1949, when we dropped all the way to -5. What about snow? Well, that's a little harder to come by here in Central Texas. On average, we receive about 7/10 of an inch each year. As for timing, your best chance is going to be February, when we receive about 4/10 on average. Hardly enough to build a snowman with, but remember, that's just an average. We've had plenty of multi-inch snow events throughout the years. So what is the record for snowfall? December 20th through 21st of 1929 and February 25th of 1924. Each of those events clocked in at 13 inches of snow. Besides snowfall, another event we expect at least a few times a year is icing on roadways. The wintry precip we get is greatly dependent on our surface temperatures. If rain starts before temperatures reach the freezing mark, we typically get freezing rain. This can create a thin layer of ice on the roadways, creating hazardous driving conditions. Even when it does get cold enough for snow, that snow is usually hiding one of those thin layers of ice. In these events, limit travel as much as possible, try to take commonly traveled roadways, and give yourself as much time and following distance as possible. After all, we don't get these events very often and don't have much opportunity to practice our winter driving skills.
Emergency management is usually one of the first set of eyes on potential inclement weather. I sat down with Temple Fire and Emergency Management Division Director Jennifer Henniger to discuss preparations for the winter season.
We spent a lot of time watching the weather, kind of looking at what the predictions are as we get closer to those freezing days. Look at, do we have shelter needs? Do we think that power grid's going to be okay? Try to put out messaging about taking care of the people and plants and pipes and all of those things as we get to the freezing temperatures. And then if we see the freezing roads, precipitation, or things that we think are going to be hazardous for driving conditions, we try to encourage people to stay at home, stay off the roads, limit travel, be safe.
And in those regards, like you said, if road conditions are bad, I'm sure that probably requires a partnership with other organizations across town. So what does that look like, that partnership, making sure that you guys are kind of all on one accord as well?
So we work very closely with TxDOT. We have several TxDOT roads. Our Public Works crew and TxDOT crews, they kind of come to an agreement early on what that looks like for sanding. TxDOT is responsible for the TxDOT roads, however, they do some specific areas like 31st Street going into the hospital. There's a couple of spots in our industrial park that we want to make sure that those distribution centers are still functional. And so we do have an annual meeting with them just to make sure everybody's still on the same page. Are there any changes from last year's plan? And then we just monitor together and keep that communication line open.
And in extreme events, because obviously, we're in Central Texas, we don't see a massive winter unlike some other cities across the country. In the event pretty similar to how we saw for like the winter of 2021, were there any things or circumstances that you learned that winter that are still being applied to future winters as well?
So that winter was an exceptionally crazy one that we've heard a lot of terminology about once in a lifetime type experience, but that doesn't mean we can't get lessons learned from it. So we want to make sure that what we've learned from it we keep going forward with. So things like keeping up with our shelter list. We partner with several of our faith-based facilities in the community, make sure that they are ready and equipped, training, work with Red Cross, make sure that we have a way to feed people. If we have massive power outages and people can't feed themselves at home, or they have to leave their home because it's not safe for them to stay there if they have medical equipment or whatever that need is, we need to be able to take care of folks all the time. And so just making sure that we keep those lists current, we keep those relationships current. A lot of what we do is relationship based, and so I try to make sure at least annually that I'm touching base with all of them. And are there any contact change? People who've moved on. What's the phone number? Because unfortunately things don't happen Monday through Friday 8 to 5 typically. So I need to be able to get a hold of somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning on a holiday or whatever that looks like. So making sure that we have those contacts, make sure we have those plans in place. One thing that the city did is a big push to switch to four-wheel drives for a lot of vehicles that didn't have four-wheel drive. So that way, if we need to get out on the road, that we are as safe as possible doing so.
That's definitely great. As it pertains, like you said, partnership with other organizations, other shelters, things of that nature, do you have a general guess as far as how many like different spaces, or if people did need help, like maybe you could serve 1,000, 2,000 people? Is there a generic number of, the amount of resources that are available to the community, or it's kind of just a first come, first serve basis? How does that work?
So we have a number of locations identified as shelters. They've done fire inspections, we've done walkthroughs with Red Cross, we've identified kind of what their floor plan would look like if they needed to set up for a shelter, and we do it based off of need. So if we see that we've opened one shelter, for example, and it's starting to fill up, when we get to about 50%, we'll call and put the next one on standby. So we try to kind of stair step into what that need is, because we don't want to stretch our resources too thin and not be able to adequately provide. But once we get to 75%, then we plan to open the next shelter. And we have plenty of capacity for the need, whatever that looks like. If we need to call in more resources, we have that option. Work very closely with my county partner, City of Killeen partner, and then as we move up to the state, we have great relationships and are constantly in contact. What's the need? How can we help? And we're all there for each other.
And are there any other suggestions or advice that you would like to share that maybe I didn't ask as it pertains to winter preparation or just in generic the winter season?
So I would love for people to think about personal preparedness. So if you were to lose power, do you have medical equipment that you have? Do you have battery backup? If you can't stay there, do you have a place that you could go to? If we don't have a shelter open yet, or if it's an isolated incident, what does that look like for you? Do you have pets? What are your plans for your pets? If you have travel arrangements, do you have a backup plan? So just taking a few minutes on those, what we refer to as blue sky days. On the good days, think about what you would do if something went wrong. And that's going to make you that much better prepared for the bad day. Make it a little less rough, but just keep your eye out for our post. If you're needing resources, we have TTX Connect now. So if there is something going on and you need help, reach out to us through that, and we'll get that information and see. Maybe we're not aware that there's a need, and that's a great way to help communicate to us so that we can help meet that need.
Now, when our roads become hazardous, that's usually when the Texas Department of Transportation, or otherwise known as TxDOT, comes in the picture. Jacob Smith with the Waco TxDOT District explained their readiness to respond to icy roads.
Law enforcement usually makes the call on closing roads. However, TxDOT's #1 priority is traffic safety, is safety of the traveling public. And whenever there is a winter weather event, we have crews and support staff working 24/7 to ensure roads are as passable as possible.
And when it comes to, like you said, making those roads possible to open and close, obviously you guys are Waco District here. How do you guys work together in partnership during those times?
We're here in Waco. We cover all the way south to Salado, which includes Belton, all the way up north to Hillsboro. So I would say Dallas and Austin are more of our partner, or we're partners with everyone, but they're other districts. Belton is ours. Wintry conditions, especially inclement conditions, can turn roads to slick and dangerous conditions quickly. And so we always encourage, if you have to drive during inclement weather, to take your time, mind your speed, stay plugged into good information, and give our crews at least 200 feet of space while they're mobilized on the roadways, applying brine or conducting operations.
And would you say that there's something that I haven't asked, or another piece of suggestion that people may not know that TxDOT is a part of when it comes to winter weather?
So TxDOT's role in winter weather doesn't start during winter events. This starts earlier in the year, where our crews are stockpiling materials or testing and calibrating equipment. So this is almost a year-round effort to be prepared for winter events. Additionally, we always encourage drivers to go to drivetexas.org. It's a great website where you can check road conditions, where you can see what roadways are experiencing, and just be on the lookout for other drivers and TxDOT crews as they work during winter events.
And for those who prefer to go around obvious barricades, Traffic Officer Ryan Cabral with Temple Police Department advises to not do that. He also shared a heartfelt personal story with me that reminds us all, whether it's law enforcement or meteorologists, we are here to help you stay safe. Ryan, we know the seasons are changing. Things are getting cold outside as it pertains to preparations for the winter season. What are some of the right off the bat things that you would give as a traffic officer?
Prepare for the unknown. Sometimes we think that, we don't see it raining out. We don't see the wet spots on the road. It's not there. But you don't know what happens the night before or drainage from other things. So you need to be prepared for the unknown when you're out there driving around. Several years ago, we had a major ice event in the city, and the biggest problem was folks weren't prepared for that. They weren't thinking of ice in Texas, at least in that kind of situation like we had. So just being out there knowing that it's cold, that the potential for the ice is there to drive accordingly.
When there's times where some roads may be blocked off, you guys have to put barricades out, TxDOT, things of that nature. What do you guys do for those who obviously want to defy the law, maybe still want to go around a barricade? They maybe usually would be able to go down that street, but since it's inclement weather, they can't. Are there any consequences in stance? Are there any citations? What's that process when it's especially during inclement weather?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for drivers to understand is, what is a barricade? What are they supposed to be following? So, we think of those big orange, semi-walls, little short walls we see, but it's not just that. It's really any kind of channelization device, like cones, flare pots, the little white and orange things that you see up at parades and stuff, the orange barrels. Those are all types of barricades, and those are things that you need to be looking out for. The law is very strict on this, where they do not want you violating these things. And typically it's just a citation. You go around a barricade because you're running to work and you're trying to get there and you go around that barricade, traffic citation. Where that changes is when we start having it out for water over the roadway. Folks that live here in the Temple area, they know we have several low water crossings where we have significant water over the roadway. Due to that, you violate something like that because of the high water, now it goes to something that's an arrestable offense where you can actually be taken into custody.
And speaking of that, I know obviously you guys are people too. You guys have families, of course, and things that you love and care about. Has there been any particular instances where you can remember during a winter season where maybe you saw a citizen that needed help and you kind of saw yourself in their shoes? Is there any kind of personable, relatable story that you could give to kind of really stress the importance of winter safety?
Yeah, so not necessarily on the winter side, but a few years ago, we had a really high amount of rain come through the area. So much to the point where our lake went to way above full, which some of us aren't used to seeing. But West Adams, we had a section where it got really flooded out there, and a car actually got stuck in the water out there, and it was a young lady with her children in the car. And that was something that, myself and other officers had to, tread through that water to go get them. And it's one of those things, I got, young children at home, so I see that, and I'm like, man, I'd hate to be in that position. And we're gonna do everything we can to get to them and get them out of that situation. Us and our firefighters that we work with very well, even our local record companies, they're all about it, driving their vehicles out there to get to those folks. But the best thing is to be aware. Our citizens should be aware with most of these issues occur, because they've been occurring for years, and to make sure they don't put themselves in that situation where we have to come get them. If you see the water on the roadway, if you don't know, turn around, find a different way to go. Yeah, our city is really good. Special shout out to our street department guys. They're on top of it. When we have these events coming in, they're usually tracking it, and we work with them to make sure we have the proper warning signs out. Some of the biggest things that folks need to be aware of is if you see those orange and black signs, that is a warning sign, and it's telling you that you have to obey this sign. Whether it be speed or, turn around or take a right, whatever it may be. If it's orange and black, it is a regulatory sign. Follow what that sign is telling you to do. And it's going to keep, you safe, it's going to keep others safe, and hopefully everybody gets home at the end of the day.
All right, that's the goal.
That's the goal.
Right. Lastly, Lieutenant Crystal Baker with Copperas Cove Police Department, or more popularly known as the user behind the many funny law enforcement posts on social media, wraps my segment of the 2025 Winter Preparedness here in Central Texas. So obviously we're talking about winter road conditions ahead of winter officially starting. We know meteorological winter starts December 1st, but it's not more so widely recognized until the 21st of December. Either way, we know temperatures are changing. Road conditions will also be changing. For you working in law enforcement, what does that mean, you guys kind of being that first line of defense when we do see, pretty bad road conditions from winter like precipitation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the winter inclement weather, there's a lot more vehicle accidents and things that we need to respond to, and it's risky for the public to go out in those conditions, but also for first responders too, especially when we need to get somewhere in a hurry.
And I know that we've also talked about, like in previous years, some years are worse than others. Speaking on your personal experience from 2021, I'm pretty sure many Texans remember that winter. Talk a little bit about what you learned and ways that you've implemented that into future winter seasons as well.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, 2021, I remember being particularly bad. We have a lot of elderly population in our city that can't get to other places, and we're in need of supplies and medications and food and things like that. So we actually banded together and made deliveries so that we didn't have to get the public out on the roadways to handle those types of things. Also, I think a lot of people think the devices or barricades that we put out are for decoration, but I assure you that they're not. They're there for a reason. So yeah, a lot of people try to navigate those barriers.
And speaking of that, people who want to not abide by the barriers, and they do tend to, pass through them, or what are some of the consequences that may come? Are there any consequences? What could that look like for, people who may want to go down a road that they typically could, but because of the inclement weather, they're no longer able to?
Right, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you go around the barricades and disregard a traffic control device, you could be cited. In some cases, a citation is absolutely earned, especially if you go around that barricade and you end up getting in an accident or damaging property or something of that nature. But usually, part of our job is to educate the public too. So we might have a talk with you and let you know that, hey, those barricades are there for a reason. So it's not always a citation.
Got you. And then I know I'll probably have to also get this information from TxDOT as well, but do you have an estimate, maybe over the years, has traffic violations went up during the winter season since you've been with Copperas Cove? Has it went down? What's kind of your general standpoint on that?
Yeah, so I mean, not having the data in front of me, I would say that I wouldn't necessarily say they go up. I think a lot of people do try to stay off the roadways as much as possible. I would say the vehicle accidents probably increased just a little bit during, we're not used to driving around on icy roadways. So.
And if there's any other piece of advice that you could share with the public as it pertains to winter precipitation, dangerous road conditions that we're not used to, what is some of that advice you could give?
Well, the first one being, I think this winter is going to be a little bit interesting because, you know, as of January 1 of this year, I believe it was House Bill 3297, don't quote me on that. But Texas law changed where non-commercial vehicles, you're not required to show proof of vehicle inspection when you get your vehicle registered. But that did not eliminate the responsibility of the vehicle owner to maintain their vehicle. And so I'm curious to see if people are still going to take that responsibility. I would say definitely a big piece of advice would be to prepare ahead of time, leave early, give yourself ample time to get to your destination. Don't run out the door at the last minute thinking that you're going to get there without any issues, especially with icy roadways and things of that nature. So I would say leave early, leave the distractions at home, and make sure that your vehicles are maintained, make sure your tires are good, windshield wipers are good to go, and all that good stuff.
Hey guys, Whitney Huddleston here to talk about how schools prepare for the possibility of wintry weather and what the protocols are for keeping students safe. While winter storms aren't common in Central Texas, of course, school districts have to make careful decisions when freezing temperatures, ice, or hazardous travel conditions are possible, often with little to no time and changing forecasts, of course. Those decisions are not made lightly. They start well before the first drop in temperature. In preparing this story, I spoke with Dr. Michael Novotny, the district superintendent of Salado ISD, where my kiddos go, who explained that communication is key ahead of potential winter weather event. He says he stays in close contact with other school administrators within the district, superintendents of neighboring school districts such as Temple or Belton, Academy, and members of his school board as conditions develop. Together they evaluate road conditions, what potential impacts are going to be, what the weather is going to be looking like, what it's looking like right now, forecasted conditions as well, all to determine the safest course of action. That can, of course, mean moving forward with a regular school day, delaying the start, releasing students early, or canceling school altogether. Dr. Novotny emphasized that while every storm is different, of course, the safety of students and employees is always their top priority, and decisions are made with that responsibility in mind. So if you were ever wondering, superintendents and administrators is who ultimately makes the call for each school district. For the 2025-2026 school year, UIL guidelines for Texas schools are also a factor. They're factoring in how districts handle winter weather, especially when it comes to outdoor activities such as sports or recess. School administrators are paying close attention to wind chill. It's a major parameter when deciding whether students should be allowed outside at all, because it often tells a very different story than the actual air temperature. If students forget to bring appropriate layers, they likely won't be allowed outdoors, especially on really cold days, according to the UIL. There are several factors influencing one's susceptibility of risk of cold-related injury or illness. These factors can be additive. Thus, it is essential to appreciate every one of these factors along with the associated signs and symptoms of hypothermia and frostbite. For example, exposure to 30 degrees to 50 degrees temperature under wet and windy conditions can be equivalent to sub-zero temperatures with no wind or moisture. You can see that there can be a large difference between outside temperature, such as 40 degrees, for example, when you factor in all these other things, what it actually feels like. So if you are a parent sending a kiddo to school like I do, it would not be a bad idea to pack extra layers such as gloves and a hat in their backpack to stay there for the entire winter season. Interesting stuff here.
Well, thanks again for joining us, everybody. I hope you learned a thing or two that you can take with you through the winter season. For meteorologist Faith Colbert, meteorologist Whitney Huddleston, I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Farrell.